Marcus checked his bank account on a Tuesday night, the same way he does every month after payday. Same job, same hours. Got a raise last year, actually 3%, which felt good at the time. But sitting there staring at that number, something felt off. The rent went up again. Groceries cost more than he remembered. He topped off his gas tank and winced. And somehow, even with that raise, the month felt tighter than the one before it. He figured he was just bad with money, maybe spending too much on stuff he didn't need. Maybe he needed to cut the streaming services, pack his lunch more, stop buying coffee out. But here's what Marcus didn't know, and what most Americans still don't know. The problem wasn't his habits. The problem was a mechanism built into the economy itself. A slow, invisible process that takes real value out of your paycheck every single year, without anyone asking your permission, without showing up on any receipt, and without most people ever figuring out what hit them. And today, we're going to pull back the curtain on exactly how it works, because once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Let's start with a number that should bother you. The median household income in America right now sits around $64,000. Sounds decent, right? Now here's where it gets uncomfortable. When you adjust for inflation, real wages, meaning what your paycheck can actually buy, have been essentially flat since the early 1970s, over 50 years. 2 generations of Americans working harder, getting nominally higher paychecks, and going home with roughly the same purchasing power as their grandparents did. According to Pew Research, the average American worker today earns about the same in real terms as workers earned in 1978. Let that sink in for a second. Your parents probably told you to work hard, get a good job, climb the ladder, and they weren't wrong to say it. But they were operating in a world that no longer exists, a world where wages actually kept pace with the cost of living. That world ended before most of us were born. So what happened? To understand it, we need to talk about inflation, but not the boring textbook version. Forget the CPI charts and the Federal Reserve press releases for a minute. Let's talk about what inflation actually is in plain language. Inflation is the slow death of your dollar's value. That's it. When prices rise faster than your income, you are, by definition, getting poorer, even if the number on your paycheck goes up, even if your boss calls it a raise. Here's a metaphor that makes this click. Imagine you have a bucket of water that represents your purchasing power. Every year, your employer pours a little more water in, that's your raise. But there's a hole in the bottom of the bucket, and every year, water drips out, that's inflation. Now, if the hole drips out faster than your employer pours in, the bucket is emptying, slowly, quietly. And if you're not watching closely, you don't even notice until one day you reach in and wonder where all the water went. That's Marcus, that's most of us. Now let's make this real with actual numbers, because this is where it gets genuinely alarming. Let's say you were earning $60,000 a year back in 2000. That was a solid income, upper middle class in most of the country. What could you actually do with it? The median home price in the United States in 2000 was roughly $119,000. Today, as of 2025, the median home price is around $420,000. That's a 350% increase. Your $60,000 salary from 2000, adjusted for average wage growth, might be around $90,000 or $95,000 today. But that house, it didn't just become slightly more expensive. It became a completely different financial mountain to climb. Let's talk about groceries. The USDA tracks food costs over time, and the numbers are not gentle. A weekly grocery run for a family of 4 that cost about $200 in 2000 now runs closer to $350 to $400. That's roughly double, while wages have not doubled in real purchasing terms. Healthcare, this one is almost hard to read aloud. In 2000, the average annual health insurance premium for a family was around $6,000. By 2024, the Kaiser Family Foundation reported that number had climbed to over $23,000 per year for employer-sponsored family coverage. That's nearly a 400% increase in 24 years. Even if your employer covers half, your out-of-pocket portion alone likely exceeds what the entire premium used to cost. In college, in the year 2000, the average annual cost of attending a 4-year public university, tuition, fees, room, and board, was around $8,000. Today it sits at over $28,000 per year, according to College Board data. A 4-year degree that cost $32,000 total in 2000 now costs over $110,000 for a public school. So take that person earning $60,000 in 2000. Their housing costs exploded, their grocery bill nearly doubled, their healthcare costs quadrupled, their kids' college bills tripled, and their wage growth, maybe 40% in nominal terms over that same period. Not enough, not even close. The purchasing power of that $60,000 salary didn't just erode a little, it got hollowed out. Now here's where the mechanism starts to reveal itself, because this wasn't an accident. It wasn't random bad luck or an unfortunate chain of market forces nobody could have predicted. There is a specific structural reason why this keeps happening, and it starts with how money actually works. Most people think money is a neutral tool, a stable store of value. You earn it, you save it, you spend it. But modern money is not designed to hold its value over time. It is designed to lose it. Here's why. The US dollar since 1971 has been what's called a fiat currency. It is not backed by gold or any physical asset. Its value is managed, and that word managed is doing a lot of heavy lifting here by the Federal Reserve. And one of the explicit goals of the Federal Reserve is to maintain a roughly 2% inflation rate per year. 2% sounds harmless. It sounds like rounding error. But let's do the math that most people never bother to do. At 2% annual inflation, prices double roughly every 35 years, using the rule of 70. So if you're 25 years old today, by the time you are 60, the cost of everything around you will have roughly doubled. Whatever you save in cash will buy half as much. Whatever salary you're proud of today will feel half as powerful by the time you're thinking about retirement. And here's the part nobody at the bank is going to tell you. 2% is the target. The actual average inflation rate in the United States since 1971 has been closer to 3.8% per year, according to Bureau of Labor Statistics historical data. And in certain critical categories, housing, healthcare, education, it has been dramatically higher than that. This is not theoretical, this is math, this is your life. But the story gets more specific, because it's not just that prices go up, it's who benefits when prices go up and who gets left behind. And this is where the transfer mechanism comes in. When the Federal Reserve increases the money supply, which it does by buying government bonds and injecting liquidity into the banking system, new dollars flow into the economy, but they don't flow evenly. They don't land in your checking account and everyone else's at the same time. They enter at the top. They flow first to banks, then to large investors, then to asset markets. Stock prices rise, real estate prices rise, the value of assets goes up. And here's the uncomfortable truth. If you own assets, stocks, real estate, businesses, you benefit from this process. If your wealth is mostly in your paycheck or your savings account, you get eroded. This is what economists call the Cantillon Effect, named after the 18th century economist Richard Cantillon, who first described it. The people closest to the money printer benefit the most. The people furthest away feel the prices rise without feeling the benefit. This is not a conspiracy, it's just how the plumbing works, and most people have never been shown where the pipes are. Let's bring this back to Marcus for a second. Marcus works a salaried job. His income comes in the form of dollars, specifically, dollars that sit in a checking account and slowly lose purchasing power. His boss gives him a raise, but the raise is priced in the same depreciating currency. His savings account earns 1.2% interest while inflation runs at 3 or 4%. Every single year, the real value of his savings is shrinking. He is working to stand still and still falling behind. Meanwhile, his landlord, who owns the building Marcus lives in, is watching the value of that asset climb. His landlord's net worth goes up every year, even if the landlord does nothing, changes nothing, improves nothing. The asset appreciates. Marcus's labor, denominated in dollars, does not keep pace. This is not a moral failing on Marcus's part. It is a structural outcome of how the system is built. Now here's where most videos on this topic either give up and leave you feeling hopeless, or pivot into some ridiculous pitch for a cryptocurrency no one's heard of. We're not doing either of those things, because the answer is not to be angry at the system. The answer is to understand the system well enough to stop being its victim. Let's talk about what actually protects your purchasing power. The first thing to understand is that cash is not neutral storage. Keeping large amounts of money in a traditional savings account is, in real terms, a guaranteed slow loss. If your savings account pays you 1.5% and inflation is running at 3.5%, you're losing 2% of your real purchasing power every single year. $100,000 in cash savings loses $2,000 in real value annually without a single bad decision on your part. The people who have figured this out, and this is the uncomfortable, unsexy secret of wealth building, are the ones who have moved their financial life out of cash-denominated savings and into assets that either produce income or appreciate with the economy. Stocks, real estate, businesses, things that go up in value as prices go up, rather than things that hold a fixed dollar number while that dollar number slowly means less. This is why the S&P 500 matters so much as a concept, not because it is magical, but because it represents ownership in businesses that can raise their prices, adapt to inflation, and grow their earnings over time. Since 1950, the S&P 500 has returned an average of about 10.9% annually in nominal terms, or roughly 7 to 8% after inflation. That is real growth. That is purchasing power that actually compounds. Consider two people. One person earns $60,000 a year and keeps their savings in cash. Over 20 years, even setting aside $200 a month, that $84,000 in raw contributions earns maybe $20,000 in savings account interest. Meanwhile, inflation has eaten away at the value of every dollar they saved. The other person earns the same $60,000, sets aside the same $200 a month, but invests it consistently in a broad index fund. Over 20 years at a historical average return of 10%, that same $200 a month becomes over $150,000. Real money, wealth that actually grew faster than inflation could eat it. That difference, not the amount saved, but the mechanism it went into, is the entire ballgame, and most people never get taught this. They're told to save. Nobody specifies what to save into. Now let's add one more layer to this, because this is where the real leverage lies. The people who benefit most from inflation are not just passive index fund investors. They are asset owners who also use debt strategically. And this is a concept that sounds dangerous on the surface, but makes complete sense once you understand the math. Here's the thing about fixed-rate debt in an inflationary world. If you borrow money today at a fixed rate and inflation erodes the value of the dollar, you're paying back that loan with cheaper dollars over time. A mortgage taken out at 6% in a world where inflation runs at 3 or 4% means the real cost of that debt is shrinking year over year. Your debt stays fixed. Everything around it inflates. This is how real estate investors have systematically built wealth for decades, not by buying properties in cash, but by using fixed-rate debt to lock in today's borrowing costs while assets appreciate and rental income rises with inflation. The wealthy understand this intuitively. They borrow to buy assets. Their debt works for them. The average worker borrows to buy things that depreciate: cars, electronics, furniture, and pays back that debt with dollars that cost them real working hours. The direction of borrowing matters enormously. This doesn't mean everyone should rush out and take on debt. It means understanding why the wealthy relationship with debt looks so different from the average person's relationship with debt. It's not recklessness. It's a strategic understanding of how inflation interacts with leverage. Now let's bring this all the way home, because we've covered a lot of ground, and I want you to leave here with a clear picture of what to actually do with this information. Your paycheck feels smaller every year because it is smaller in real terms. Not because you're bad with money, not because you don't work hard enough, but because the dollar itself is designed to depreciate, and wages in America have not kept pace with the cost of the things that actually matter: housing, healthcare, education, food. The math has been working against you in ways nobody bothered to explain. The mechanism that transfers purchasing power away from workers and toward asset owners is not hidden exactly. It's just not taught. It operates through monetary expansion, through the Cantillon Effect, through an asset market that appreciates while cash savings erode. And the response, the practical, actionable response, is not to panic. It is to migrate your financial activity from purely cash-denominated saving toward asset ownership. Start with the simplest, most accessible version of this: a low-cost index fund through a tax-advantaged account, a Roth IRA if you're in a lower tax bracket right now, a 401k if your employer matches contributions, because that match is an instant 100% return before any market gains. These are not complicated instruments. They are just mechanisms that put your money on the right side of inflation instead of the wrong side. If your employer offers a 401k match and you are not taking the full match, you are leaving part of your compensation on the table, right now, today, and no amount of cutting streaming services or skipping lattes is going to make up for that missed compounding over 20 or 30 years. After that, educate yourself on index investing. Read about asset allocation. Understand that the goal is not to pick winning stocks. It's to own a slice of the entire economy so that as prices rise across the board, so does the value of what you own. Marcus isn't bad with money. He was just never taught that the bucket had a hole in it. Now he knows, and knowing is the first step to patching it. The system isn't going to change because workers deserve better wages. The Federal Reserve isn't going to stop targeting inflation because it hurts savers. The structural incentive to own assets over holding cash isn't going to disappear because it feels unfair. None of that changes. But what can change is your position within that system. Whether you're on the side that gets eroded or the side that grows, that's not a matter of luck or income level or how hard you work. It's a matter of where your money lives and what it's doing while you sleep. So decide today, not next month, not when you get your next raise, because every month you wait is another month of the bucket draining. Start small if you have to. $20 a month in an index fund is not nothing. It is the beginning of a different financial identity, one where inflation works with you instead of silently against you, year after year, paycheck after paycheck. The game was always rigged toward asset owners. Now you know the rules. Go own something.